My cup runneth under. L'chaim, everybody. Good to walk Shavua Tov.
L'chaim, Shavua Tov.
And welcome everybody to Torah studies, which actually made it a special effort for this week because the last week was like Bomer at a wedding at this point. The week before, we were traveling back from New York. Tim was flying back to Texas, and Helen and Wendy were driving with me, and others as we came back. So here we are, back together. So Shavuos is coming, and I remember very clearly 44 years ago, because 44 years ago, I was engaged to get married right after Shavuos. Wow. And the Rebbe came out with a campaign that year, this is in 1980, that everybody, men, women, and children, should go to shul to hear the 10 Commandments. And as dutiful soldiers, we went and put up placards all over New York, as a call to action that everybody should come to synagogue. That I've explained, just like in Mount Sinai, originally every soul was there, every person was there, and every soul of future generations was there to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. So likewise, our sages say that this is Niskarim V'Nasim, this is something that reoccurs every year. The giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai. So in a week, this Wednesday, Tuesday night is Shavuos, and Wednesday day will be the 3,336th time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
36.
Triple 36, that the Torah is once again going to be given by God Almighty at a theater or synagogue near you. So be there to receive the Torah. And why do we receive the Torah? Well, aside from the fact that the Rebbe said that we should all be there, aside from the fact that it is our inheritance, and an inheritance means it belongs to us, and it belongs to us in a unique way. It belongs to us, to every single Jew, as an inheritance. If, God forbid, parents pass on, right, and a child is a day old, and that's who's left is that child inherits everything that belongs to the parents, right? And how do they inherit? Because they did something? No, because they are something, the child of the parent, right? So they automatically have a portion, or it's theirs. So likewise, the Jewish people, each and every single one of us, have Torah's our inheritance equally. So it doesn't belong greater to the scholar, greater to the student of the yeshiva than the simple child, or the one who doesn't even study it, isn't aware of its value. It belongs equally to every single one of us. So as a result, every single one of us should be there to once again accept it, receive it at Mount Sinai. So together with this notion, this idea of the Torah being an inheritance, there's a specific mitzvah that's related to the Torah. And let's share over here. Yes. Is it here? No, but he was trying to reach you, but about coming tomorrow instead of today. Tomorrow? Yeah, can you come tomorrow night instead? Okay. Okay, just text him and tell him that, because I think he was trying to reach you for that.
I spoke with him.
Oh, you did? When? Just now?
No. At 5:43.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So
So where did I put this? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. To share the screen. My apologies. There we go. So the verse says, and now write this song for yourselves. Can you see it on the screen? It's large enough. Maybe I can make it larger. Yeah. Write this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel. Place it in their mouths so that the song will be my witness for the children of Israel. So this passage is in the Parshas Azinu. It's on this week's Torah portion. It's the final and last mitzvah of the Torah. And it's speaking about the poem of Hazinu. And the Rambam explains, Maimonides says, it's a positive commandment for every Jewish man to write a Torah scroll for personal use. The passage states, and now write this song for yourselves, in Deuteronomy. This does not refer only to the song, but to the entire Torah, which includes this song. This is inferred from the law that Torah may not be written in sections. The Torah is invalid if one letter is missing. So if you already wrote Torah in sections, for sure it's invalid. The Torah scroll has to be an entire Torah scroll. So when the verse says to write this, to write this song for yourselves, it is in reference to the entire Torah, right? So let's review some of the obligations that go with this particular mitzvah. Ooh. Maybe not so clear over here. We'll try to clarify. So even if our ancestors left you a Torah scroll, it is a mitzvah to write one yourself. If you write a scroll by hand, it is considered as if you received it on Mount Sinai. If you don't know how to write a Torah, you want to see what you can do there? Thank you. Commission others to write it for you. One who repairs even one letter of a Torah scroll is considered as written an entire Torah scroll. So this again, Maimonides. I think it has to do with the fact that I didn't open. It's a PDF as opposed to opening up in.
Exactly. So I've downloaded it. Now you can just kind of file it, kind of open.
All right.
Just give it a second.
All right. Folks, what do you see? I think probably have to stop sharing it and share again.
No, left.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Clarity.
Thank you.
Yes, need always. All right. So you can fulfill our obligation by purchasing a complete scroll that was not written with us in mind. Can we do that? Right? Because from here, from Maimonides, it sounds like if even your ancestors left you, your parents left you a Torah scroll, you have to write your own, right? If you don't know how to write a Torah, so you can commission it. But what if it wasn't done specifically for you, but you have it? So the Gemara says in the Talmud, Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Rababa, taught in the name of Gilad, who taught in the name of Rab, purchasing a complete Torah scroll from the market is like snatching a mitzvah from the market stall. To write a Torah scroll is equivalent to receiving it on Mount Sinai. So do we fulfill the obligation? Yes, but it's not the best way to do it. It's like snatching a mitzvah rather than being complete in the mitzvah, completely engaged and mindful of the mitzvah. Right? The best way is to write it ourselves. And if you can't do that, at least commission it for yourself. Right? As Rashi says, he performs a mitzvah. However, writing the Torah scroll is a much greater mitzvah. So, anybody have a question about this? Is there anything that pops up as a result of this? Any issue?
It's not it's not inexpensive to write a Torah scroll.
Super.
Right. It's expensive, right? That's definitely a thought.
Why not?
And
Why not timeshare? Why not share a Torah? Why not share a separate Torah?
It also says you can make a correction to a Torah scroll. And
right.
Can
In
you buy a letter?
In other words, because the Torah scroll was invalid, because it needed a correction, and you corrected it, it's like writing a Torah scroll.
So how do you correct it?
But being your Torah scroll, though, it's your Torah scroll, right? Right. The mitzvah is for you to have the Torah scroll. So if you made that correction in a Torah scroll that's invalid of yours, right? So what's seemingly the obvious question, like, okay, it's expensive, but you have a credit card. Folks, give me your credit card, put a down payment, and you'll pay it over time. Not to me, but describe because I don't have them. How come we don't see people running to do this? Now, even if you want to say the expense, but some people should be, we don't see that this is the Jewish way today. People are not either writing it themselves or even commissioning, or even, as you say, Hamid, which maybe that's a valid way that, let's say, families get together and do that. And even if they do, what do they do with the Torah scroll? It goes to the synagogue. Is that what the mitzvah is speaking about here? They don't keep it for personal use. The mitzvah doesn't speak about giving it away. The mitzvah is about you having it. So why isn't this happening?
I do get emails periodically from various Jewish groups about sponsoring the writing of a Torah scroll. So
Absolutely, but again, that's if you will say in the parlance of the Talmud, that's called a b'di'evid of a b'di'evid, like a second quality of a second quality way to do it. Jews do mitzvahs want to do it top quality. So why aren't you seeing people doing this? Okay, if you want to make the argument, okay, all Jews can't afford it, or all Jews are not so observant, but some Jews are, and some Jews are not doing it.
But you can't study Torah by yourself. It has to be with people. So why would you want to keep it just so that?
Whoa, one second. The Torah is telling us, the verse in the Torah is telling us do this, right? Right? The same Torah tells us put on tefillin. The same Torah tells us keep Shabbos. The same Torah tells, right? We do those things. Why are we doing this? You want to create a rationale not to do? I mean, the Torah is telling us to do something. Why are we doing it? Plain and simple, right?
it's not easy. That's why.
Yeah. Okay, this is not a judgment of, God forbid, this is not a judgment of the Jewish people. This is a question. We're not here to create judgments against fellow Jews. No, we don't want to do that. Absolutely in agreement. But it's still a question of, Jewish people have been observant of Torah mitzvahs for all these generations, fulfilling, going into fire and hell, literally. And so this one all of a sudden just kind of got dropped to the wayside. Again, if you want to say that many people not, but where do we even see the more observant people? I don't have a Sefer Torah that in my home. And okay, maybe I don't have the means that others do, but there are people who have the means. They don't write a Torah and keep it in their home. If yes, they're giving it to the synagogue. But that's not what the verse is telling us to do, right? So obviously something is we need to understand over here that the last 1800 years is something that has changed in our mitzvah of a Torah scroll. So let's go back. Moses, he received the Torah Mount Sinai. God dictated to him. He wrote it down, right? The original Sefer Torah. And he taught everything that was in the Torah scroll. It's, how should we say, the Torah is written in shorthand.
Right.
If any stenographist knows shorthand, right? And he was told by God the long form of what the mitzvah is. So, for example, the observance of Shabbos or the observance of Tefillin or whatever it might be. When you look at a Torah itself, you're not going to get the full picture, right? It's all documented today in the Talmud, Code of Jewish Law, right? But originally, when it was given, how was it given to Moshe Rabbeinu? So the Gemara says, teachings that are transcribed may not be recited from memory. Teachings that are transmitted orally may not be transcribed. Ooh. So that which is written can't be oral. When the Rebbe would buy a farbring and say a verse from the Torah, to say a whole verse from the Torah orally is a question. Look what Talmud says. So sometimes we'd make a distinction, or it might not say the whole verse. Now that's in a very, high-minded awareness and keeping of that statement of the Talmud. But most importantly is teachings that are transmitted orally may not be transcribed. Is that clear? In other words, when Moshe Rabbeinu got orally from God Almighty what the meanings of each verse was, it was transmitted orally for generations and generations. It was only in the third generation, the beginning of the third generation, early 200s of the Common Era, that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he transcribed the Mishnah. And the reason why he did that is because there was a fear that the future generations might lose the teachings. If you recall, last week was Lag BaOmer. A week ago today was Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Akiva's students passed away because of a plague. And on Lag BaOmer, the plague ended. So we're actually bringing on Shabbos about this. And last week spoke about it. That what are you celebrating? But that his students stopped dying. Like what's that to celebrate? So you have to understand, Rabbi Akiva was in the 2nd century. He was there by the destruction of the Holy Temple in the year 69 by the Romans. But even though they destroyed the Holy Temple, Jewish life carried on, Jewish teachings. He had 24,000 students. You know what those students were like children to him? Those students had committed to memory the entire oral tradition. It was not written down, nothing except for the 5 books of Moses or Tanakh. And everything committed. They died in a plague. Do you know what that meant? You know what that meant? The end of Judaism. Because Judaism was right here to the scholars. How would it be transmitted, right? The commoner, I mean, we're talking about ignoramuses and unlearned people, of course, because you'd have to dedicate your life, right, that you can remember the teachings. because that's all there is. It can't be transcribed. So even though he was devastated by the loss of students that are like children, but what was more devastating, or what could be more devastating, is that Judaism may not survive. And so he found 5 new students to begin all over again. How necessary it was. He couldn't, of course, he mourned the loss, but he couldn't be devastated by the loss because he had to continue, because if it wasn't for him continuing, what would happen? Because it wasn't transcribed. About, I don't know, 70 odd years later, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he transcribed the first thing, because at that point, it was very clear that the future would be uncertain. Yet, even in Rabbi Akiva's time, as precarious it was, he made sure there was a future. But in Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's time, to get enough students that would be dedicated, and remember, they have to remember everything. That's a difficult task. So it was written down. Oops. Rambam, Maimonides. Why did the Rabbi Yehuda Nazi transcribe the oral tradition rather than leave things as they were? And because he observed that the number of students was progressively shrinking while the difficulties were progressively increasing. The wicked Roman kingdom was expanding throughout the world and growing increasingly stronger. Jews were wandering about and relocating to distant locations. He therefore composed a Mishnah, compilation of Jewish law, for all to study so that they would not be forgotten. He and his court devoted their lives to teaching the Mishnah to the public. So this was a dramatic effect on the way we study Torah, right? Now there was a text to go to. Now, mind you, that text, even though it was written like an oral text. In other words, there's a lot between the lines too. And it took then a couple of hundred years later that we needed the Gemara to explain the Mishnah. And what the two come together is called the Talmud. Exactly. It's called the Talmud, right? Right? Called the Talmud. So the modification to study resulted in a modification to the mitzvah of writing a Torah. As Rav Yosef Kaira in the Code of Jewish Law writes, today is a mitzvah to transcribe the 5 books of the Torah as well as the Mishnah, the Talmud, and their commentaries. So whereas originally, what was the mitzvah? To write a Torah scroll, right? Now, halacha states that it's a mitzvah to do all of these things, right? Why? Why would they be incorporated? Mm-hmm.
For the same reason, so that it wouldn't be lost as the world gets all the more tumultuous.
Right. So what actually ends up happening is that the Torah scroll then becomes relegated to be read from in synagogue, because the mainstay of where you're going to study will be, in the oral tradition. The requirements to write a Torah scroll was binding in early generations, when Torah scrolls were written for the purpose of study. However, today Torah scrolls are placed in synagogue for congregational chanting. Therefore, the contemporary Jew of means is obligated to transcribe the books of Chumash, Mishnah, Talmud, and their commentaries to study with their children. Okay? Yeah. So so what's being stated over here? We needed to write a Torah scroll, so we would have something to study by, right? We need now to incorporate not just that, but also from the oral tradition that has been written down. And we need then to have those books too, right? So the emphasis is not merely on Chumash, on the 5 books, or a Torah scroll rather, right? But on all areas. So now all we've done though with the mitzvah is just push it to another level or to another degree. Originally, the mitzvah was to write a Torah scroll, right? Because that was the only thing that you could have for yourself to study from, besides what's between your ears, right? Or your teacher taught you, right? Now that it's been expanded, so we have now the Talmud, yeah, right? And other commentators and so on. So why aren't we publishing those things? If the mitzvah was to have your own Torah, right? Write your own or commission your own. So why aren't we having commissioned to have our own Torah books? Right? And even if when we come to answer that question, we still have an issue. The Torah specifically says and commands that we should write a Torah scroll for ourselves. Why is that lessened? Why would that be, even if you want to say, okay, commission a book to be written, which we don't see people commissioning books to be written, right? You purchase books, you don't commission. The Torah is speaking about commissioning, either write it yourself or commission. Okay, so you're not going to write your own book, you're not a publisher, but we're not commissioning anybody. First question. Second question is, but still the Torah is telling us clearly as a biblical law to commission a Torah scroll. So if you want to add is one thing, but why is that being subtracted? Is that clear? You don't have to answer. Just make sure you have clarity on the question.
Just trying to get the subtracted part.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're not commissioning books,
Right.
but minimally, so you want to say that it incorporates more today. Fine. Okay. First of all, we don't see people commissioning books. But in the end, even if we were, the Torah is telling us minimally commission a Torah scroll. So, we really haven't answered the question. We've understand now the development of how Torah evolved, right? We get that, right?
So I have a question. Is it possible that this is a biblical commandment? Is it possible that there's a rabbinic rabbis have commanded something different?
Yes, but then the question is, on what grounds, there has to be a grounds that they're undoing something that the Torah is telling us to do. How do they do that? Right? On what basis? Is that clear? Rabbis can't come and tell us, the rabbis are going to tell us now,
They always seem to add more.
add but not subtracting. They're not subtracting. And if there's a subtracting, it's a question how they can subtract something, right?
Well, the rabbis thought that the oral law was getting lost, so it needed to be written down. Maybe they also thought.
No,
that-
okay, that's fine. That's good.
Right?
But yes,
Same way, that maybe copying the Torah would also lead to mistakes if the right people were doing it and it wasn't more.
so commission. Okay, you're right. Okay, fine. So you can't do it. I can't write a Torah myself. So I should commission. not only we don't see commissioning books, but which is enlarging the command. So you might say whether that's rabbinic or biblical, good question. I'm not certain exactly, but okay, we can enlarge it. But it seems to subtract. It seems the custom still is that we're not doing this command
directly.
who's commissioning a Torah to have for themselves? If you are doing it, you're doing it for the congregation, right? Yeah. Okay. So we need to tweak a little bit what we're talking about over here to get. I'm just trying to create a little tension over here, so keep you awake.
You succeeded.
Afraid, didn't want to. So let's take another mitzvah, and maybe if we have a parallel, we'll get it. We'll have an appreciation. Okay, let's take the mitzvah of mezuzah. Right, first paragraph. The Shema inscribe them on the doorpost of your homes and your gates. Do we make a blessing when you're writing the mezuzah?
The Shema.
So
Huh?
I would assume, yes.
No, we don't. We do when the mitzvah is not to write it. The mitzvah is to affix it. Right? The blessing is ligboa mezuzah, to affix a mezuzah. Right? So the preamble isn't as important as what comes after, which is the affixing of the mezuzah. And as Rambam again writes in the laws, before affixing the mezuzah onto the doorpost, recite the following blessing: "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with the commandments and command us to affix a mezuzah." We do not recite the blessing when the mezuzah is written, because the definition of the mitzvah is the act of affixing. So you write when you're the mitzvah of writing a Torah scroll, we don't fulfill the mitzvah in of itself in writing the Torah scroll. What's the mitzvah?
And
Learn from it. Learn from it. Right? The essence of the mitzvah is to study from the written book, not from memory. Remember, what do we say? That which is committed to writing, don't commit it to memory. By the way, when the Torah reader reads from the Torah scroll and he does it by memory, you don't fulfill the mitzvah.
How about when we read Siddur?
Davening is different. Davening is about your heart, right? It's about your heart. So if you're connecting to Hashem in your heart and you close your eyes and say the words, right? Maybe for concentration purposes, it's better not to, so you can concentrate on the words. But if it works better for you to be more tuned to the words and the message and the connection in your heart, so then fine. Because davening is about your heart to sense a connection to Hashem. But the Torah scroll is not about writing a Torah scroll. The mezuzah is not about writing a mezuzah. There it's about affixing the mezuzah, which of course you need to write it beforehand. And the Torah scroll, of course, you have to write it beforehand, but it's about that you have something that you can study from instead of having it committed to memory. Okay. So there's a mitzvah to study the Torah, and there's a separate mitzvah, right? But we have to make a distinction over here. The mitzvah to study Torah, you have to teach them and learn them. Torah tells us elsewhere. But here it's telling us that there's a mitzvah to study from the written book itself. That's a different mitzvah, right? So, for example, we're studying right now. So we're fulfilling the mitzvah of learning Torah. Are we fulfilling the mitzvah of learning Torah from a written source? Well, that's a separate mitzvah. So you need, right? So, okay, today we have it here on the screen, right? So in that sense, you have the written word, and you need then the written in order to learn it from the book itself, right? Remember Rabbi Gerlitzky of blessed memory was one of the original 9 Hasidim who came in 1941 from Shanghai, escaping the Nazis, and came to Montreal and set up the yeshiva here in 1941. So in those days, in his time already, these booklets came out, right, of weekly study. You know, we live in the jet age of where you want everything convenient. So these booklets are, you know, so you have Chumash in here with Rashi, you have Rambam in here. So we get up in the synagogue and we start, guys, Chevra, stop it. You have to learn from the Rambam's book. He's crying. He's saying, you're learning, but you're not learning in his book. You know, you're learning from a, you know, like printed pamphlet, you know. He said, at least 50% of the time, learn from the book. You know? It's so cute. So today, we don't even learn from a book. We learn from a... Now, and what he's saying, there's a truth to it, right? There's something to that. God says, Kitzur lachem, write for yourselves is Torah, right? So today, in the writing of that Torah, it doesn't mean just the Torah scroll, but as Torah is enlarged in what is written. So we have other things that includes. And if we look at the verse, second. Let's go back for a moment. Oh. Look at the verse. Write this song for yourselves and teach it. Teach it. There it is. Right? Just like mezuzah, affix it. Right? Here it's teach it. Place it in their mouths so that this song will be my witness for the children of Israel. In other words, by us being devoted to the teachings and learning the teachings, we become a witness of God, to God, of God, right? And it's interesting. Teach it to their mouths so that this song will be. So I'm adding something here that I don't see in some of the commentaries, but the idea of song, like that, it's a melody. In other words, it's like a song is the Alter Rebbe says that song is the pen of the soul. In other words, it's an expression of one's soul. It's a deep bond, right? It's not just it's not just ideas. It's not just an obligation, but a song is something that is uplifting, is meditative. It's it's a deep expression of the neshama, the soul of the person. This is I'm adding something to this notion over here, right? And yet it has to be in their mouths. Mouths means that You verbalize it, you express it, right? Which that's the idea of witness. When you witness something, so the witnesses then have to verbally express what they've witnessed. So we become a witness for God by verbalizing the words of Torah, right? That it is a song for us, that it is a melody of life for us. This is therefore the importance over here and why we have the Torah scroll that we need to have, or today, why we have Torah books that we need to have in order to express this.
In the Siddur it says, in Shabbos also, even if our mouths were filled with song of praise, just as the water in the ocean, we will
Nishmas,
still
right?
not be able to thank you.
Right.
So
That's a little different. Just appreciate the distinction. That's thanking God for the things you have in your life, right? It's not speaking about Torah there. I mean, not in an open, clear way. It's just about, how dependent we are on Hashem and that everything that we are and have totally dependent on Him, and therefore all the praise in the world that we would give would not be enough. That's what the reference is over there, right? Here, we're talking about fulfilling a mitzvah. It's about us in fulfillment of this mitzvah of kisvu lachem, of writing this Torah, right? This melody of life, right? That you need to mouth in all of ours, to teach it in a way that we become a witness of God. So what's the important point over here? What's the important point? The actual writing? The actual having it even?
Giving it over and then.
It's not even about having it. If you have it and you keep it in storage, it's not what the verse is telling us, right? That's not what the mitzvah is telling us. It's in order that I can have it and always have a reference to study Torah. I can always engage, right? As a result. Sefer HaChinuch says, the reason for this mitzvah is well known that people behave according to what is prepared for them. Therefore, God commanded that every Jew prepare a Torah scroll to have with them so that they can always read from it and not need to walk to a neighbor's home to borrow it. The purpose is to learn to fear God, to know Him, and to understand His commandments that are more precious and desirable than an abundance of fine gold. We were each commanded to write a scroll, even if our ancestors left us one. This is so that the scrolls proliferate among us so that we can lend them to those who can't afford to purchase them. Another reason is that we each have new scrolls from which to study, lest we grow weary of the ancient scrolls our ancestors left us. So the scroll is that you should never have an excuse to skip a day or a night of study of Torah. And here's even a third benefit of studying from the book. As the Rebbe says, see for this week, studying from the book is easier and deeper letters enlighten. It shields us from error because we learn from the book. From a book is not easily forgotten. One can review it at all times. All this provides for the concern is that we might forsake our covenant with God. So the study of Torah is going to be etched in our minds, make it clear, be on the tip of our tongues. And as the verse says, right, that it should be on our mouth, that we can be placed in our mouths, meaning place in our mouths, we verbalize it, but meaning that it's, what we talk about, what we relate with and deal with, right? So two important points then that come out of here, that new Torah books that we have over the last 1800 years, and the mitzvah to write a Torah scroll ultimately is about learning from them, right? So What's the important thing? Writing yourself, commissioning, or just having? Having, because that's the most important point, right? As a matter of fact, think about it for a moment. If you would be writing, it might sound wonderful, but think about it. All that effort when you could be learning instead, right? So back in the day, that's what it was. You had to write. There was no other way, whether you wrote or you commissioned. So that's what defined the mitzvah. That's not what defined the mitzvah. That was the vehicle and how you could do the mitzvah. That was the means to the end. And that's the key over here. The Torah is giving us the end. And back then the means was, right? And if you look at the verse in the Torah, it says, write for yourself. Maybe, my question should be, why would it say write for yourself instead of have for yourself? Because then you would, because have for yourself, wow, would mean, just epiphany, would mean what my ancestors gave me would be sufficient. Because I have. Kisvu lachem means I have to write. So today doesn't mean to write. Then that was the only way, whether you wrote or you commissioned. That was the only way you're going to have anything in, any book. Today, you don't have to commission someone to do it for you. You just go to the store and buy it. So Kitzur Lachem is just saying always increase in having more. What you have is your heirloom of maybe you got the biggest Jewish library with all original manuscripts from Rashi, Rambam, and you think, whoa, who could have more? Let me get through all of this and then I'll buy some more. No, Kitzur Lachem. Write for yourself, have for yourself. In other words, increase in having more Jewish books. Wow. Interesting.
The Rebbe would look at the fact that so much is now electronic. It's really clear. It shields us from the error because what we learn from a book is not easily taught. You underline it, you make notes in it. I'm not saying you do that to the Torah, but it's really true. We really use all of our senses. So how do you think he'd look at learning online? Because he's really, or maybe for him, he'd understand it in a way that where you could just keep reading it on your laptop. You can make notes on your laptop too, right? People can do all that sort of stuff.
So I think the story with Rabbi Gerlitzky comes in over here. I think we need the best of both. I'm sitting in IGA in a line to buy something. I can learn something from Rambam over here in the 2 minutes that I might have. That if I wouldn't be carrying the Rambam with me necessarily, right? And it becomes maybe a little awkward, a little what to do with it, and but your phone gives you access at any time. At the same time, to only make it about the phone or other or just the booklet. So there is something about a book that's real. You know, it's got a hardcover to it. It's not a soft cover. It feels more real, a little more authentic, if you will. So there is something to that, absolutely. Right. This is going to go at the end of the week into Seamus. Right. This is going to be kept. So I have in my Tanya over here. Look at this, Tanya. This is not even so thoroughly, but I have notes in here. And I write in here. Exactly. So I can come back to it and it'll stick with me so much better. I have a reference I can always come back to. So that's absolutely. At the same time, when we traveled to New York, so I made sure that this was with me because I knew that, there'll be times that I'll need it. The most important thing is that the result that it brings, right? If the result is going to bring that it's going to enable you to do more, so go online and that's it, right? If it's the cop out, so then that's a different thing. So, it's interesting, the mitzvah of study Torah, if you're able to study more deeply in something and you study more superficially, you don't fulfill the mitzvah properly. So even in the mitzvah of learning Torah, there's a mitzvah of breaking your head. What? To break your head. That you're learning it in a way that it's creating new grooves in your brain. Grooves, the plasticity of the brain, right? They thought 50 years ago there wasn't plasticity to the brain, right? Now we know there is, and it means that when you're learning, you're creating and developing a new brain, right? More of a brain, shall we say, at least. And so in the study of Torah, when you learn it, when you're capable of learning it deeper and more profoundly, and maybe you're tired. Sometimes you're tired and you got to, so you're learning it online simply just to hear a lecture. Fine. Wonderful. But the real learning, we learned from the Minchas Chinuch before, in order to come to know God, right? To know God, to know the commandments. So to know in a way that that knowledge is developing and growing. So just like buying new books and learning new things is giving you more knowledge, that's in a quantitative and a qualitative way also, that it's called, in Yiddish, it's called Harven and Lernen, that you're I'm gonna translate that right. You're engaged. You're engaged. You're in a way that you're breaking your head, right? When you were studying something that was important for you in your work as a nurse, and you had to break your head over something so you could get clarity, so you knew the right path to take. Well, that's what you do. You break your head, right? Because this is a question of it could be life and death question. If you don't have a clarity in how to deal with this patient. So, okay, sometimes it might not be your responsibility, it might be the doctor's responsibility. They might have to break their head, but it can be the nurses, and right. And to make sure that, because the consequences could be dire, God forbid, right? So that there's that notion in study of Torah that it's God's wisdom. And as the study of Torah has a power that it changes the reality of our brain, because it's God. What do when we study Torah, we're studying God's wisdom. So God's wisdom now is becoming my wisdom. So the way He views things through his wisdom, that becomes the way can view things. Well, that's a whole metamorphosis of being. That's a transformation of being able to see the world from God's perspective. And that's what Torah gives us the capability, right? Especially Hasidic teachings like Tanya and the like give us that capacity that we can do it. And hence this becomes, the last mitzvah. It's an earlier mitzvah that we have, the mitzvah to study Torah, but that we should take ownership, kisvu lachem, that it becomes yours, right? That you own it. You own it in that you buying today means to buy books. And the Rebbe made one of the 10 campaigns. He made a campaign for men to put on tefillin, women to light Shabbos candles, keeping kosher home, mikvah, Jewish education, Torah study. And one was Bayis Molei Svarim, a home full of books, of Jewish books. Sometimes people call me up and say, my mother-in-law passed away and she had some books, Jewish books, we want to give them away. So I tell them, what? Don't give them away. It's a mitzvah to have Jewish books in your home. Now, they think, well, I'm not going to. Just having it, first of all, is a source of blessing. But by having it, maybe you'll accidentally read it and study Torah. Maybe you'll engage and it'll be, something that will inspire and bring you to greater heights in your connection to Hashem. So, therefore, this becomes a campaign in and of itself. Just, have holy books in our home. Just to bring this a step further, by the way, Mitzvah Hashem, there'll be a bris Tuesday, 10:30 here. You're not allowed to invite. You can just announce. Because when you get invited to a bris, guess what? You have to come. So the custom is you don't invite. You announce. Because you got to come. Elijah the prophet comes, so you have to come. So
Can I ask a question?
yeah, let me just, yes, in a moment, because I just want to finish this point that I rudely interrupted myself. So a bris, what was I saying? What did I say before the bris? That I wanted to bring the bris out, huh? No, that's what that comes to bris. That's why you're not invited. I'm not inviting you. Right. Right. 1 second. It'll come to me.
Having the sefer in your home.
Having the books, having a home full of books. Yes, is in itself. Thank you. Okay. So when a child is born, we put in their crib, we put a Shira Malis, which is a prayer, and we put a Chumash, a Tehillim, and a Tanya. We put it there. Now, like, to what end? Is child learning? Getting it? No. But you're creating already the atmosphere. And it's not just the atmosphere that will be in the future. Of course, with, the hope that this will be the atmosphere of the child's life, that, they'll have holy books around them, right? So we put that there because just like in utero, the child before it comes into this world, they're taught by an angel the Torah, right? And then as they come out they're tapped and they lose the awareness of it. But that awareness is only consciously they're not aware of it, but it is part of the subconscious makeup, it's part of the DNA of the child, right? So when you're putting those books and the Shira Malas around them, all you're doing is surrounding something that's already imbued with them in their DNA, that's already in utero. And now what you're just doing is imbuing that atmosphere. The very fact you're doing that has an effect on the child. So, what is that, voodoo magic? Call it whatever you want. It's a fact. It's a fact that, the ambiance that you create. Now, obviously, it's not creating and not having an effect on the child in any conscious awareness of the child. For sure not. Not even a conscious awareness of the parent who puts it there. It's beyond the conscious awareness. We are affected. I have to find where this is. I repeated this about a month ago, I think, by class. We perceive 7 parts and have an awareness of 7 parts at the same time, 1,000,000 parts that we're unaware of that are going on at the same time. So we have awareness of 7 parts versus 1,000,000 that we're unaware of. Is the fact of the subconscious mind that has an awareness subconsciously of 1,000,000 parts, is that affecting the person? Absolutely. Even I'm unaware of those 1,000,000 parts, but my subconscious mind is. Does it play on me? Of course it does. Absolutely. That's why we want to create a wholesome, holy atmosphere for that child. Those books are not going to be something there's consciously, but it is definitely creating that holy environment. So right from the get-go, okay, the child didn't buy it yet. We bought it for the child, but we're creating that for them. That is the power of the book. So go out and buy one. Add to your collection. You bring more holiness, and no question, with the purpose that you learn from it. So when you buy something you learn from. Elise, you had a question.
Yes, there's an Israeli expression, "Nishbor Shenayim," to break one's teeth. And
Right.
when you were talking earlier about it came up in my head, and I was wondering, because I never knew where that came from. And Nishbor Shenayim, we say it all the time, but does it come from this biblical?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know. It's definitely not a biblical phrase. Oh, I should say definitely. It's not from Chumash, for sure not. That much I know. Tanakh, I'm not. From Nach, I'm not certain.
You know the expression, though. You know what I'm.
Yeah.
Both the Shanayim. I use it all the time, and and then it occurred to me, like, where does this come from? Because
But Lishbora Shinaim is more about expressing an idea. Break your teeth over expressing something, right? Rather than here breaking your head, which is to understand something.
that when you said breaking your head, the first thing I thought of was
Yeah, no, I understand. But that's a different, I think it's a different expression, bringing out a different idea. I think so. In any case, it's an expression. What's important is the lesson, right? And that is accomplished, of course, when we're focused in the teachings and the learning, which is, we have a lot going on in our lives, a lot of things in our heads, and a lot of sometimes, foolish things that we have going on in our heads, and we have to be able to put those aside so we can focus in on learning. But again, here, the idea is the means is also a mitzvah, right? To have the books is that you have it, because then you'll come to use it, right? But just to buy it, to put it up on the shelf and it should collect dust, is not the intent. But even that is better than not having it. Because again, there's holiness in the book itself. There's something there. And that's what we do for the child, which is, a beautiful thing. Any questions, any comments?
So I have some Torahs for the now that my kids had when they went to school. So, I mean, they were studying from, right? So, yeah. So, and they're in English, think about some of the people too. But is that going to be transcribed differently in the Torah that the kids at this fifth grade?
I don't know what you're making reference to, but if it's a chumash, it's a chumash. A chumash is a chumash. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's too many.
Ah,
You won't want to do. Let me see what.
I've got a lot more because I have more kids. We ship them off to the kids. Yeah. Oh,
But if I'm just
but
wondering, that it wasn't changed or something like, let's say someone has gone to reconstructionist and they come out.
okay, that's a different story.
So I'm just,
I mean,
different, like, is it going to be different?
well, I mean, first of all, a Torah scroll won't be different because I don't think there's such a thing as a reconstructionist scribe. The scribe is going to be, a God-fearing person. I don't think there's such a thing. So they're going to get a real Torah scroll. But the Chumash is a printed book. So I know in Reform, for example, they'll skip different parts of the Chumash because for them it's not PC.
At least is that reform.
I grew up in Reform and broke from it because I swear they don't mention God in the liturgy. It's insane.